Hello, everybody. My name is Darren McGrath, aka Magic Skeptic, and you're all very welcome to the stream. So, I'm very happy to report that I have figured out a couple of things since I've last spoken to you guys, due in no small part to an immense amount of Googling and help from fellow streamers. Actually, I don't know if this person is in the chat, but his name, if I recall correctly, was Bob. That was at least the stated name that was on screen, but Bob actually gave me a little bit of help the last day I streamed. It was a couple of days ago, and I was able to get a few things sorted here on this stream because I'm still figuring this out as I go along, folks. So you'll have to bear with me. But since I've last spoken to you, I've also done a little bit of research behind the scenes in terms of OBS, which is the streaming software that I use. And OBS is very complicated, certainly to myself as an aging man. But I figured out, for example, that I was streaming at 60 frames per second, which is completely unnecessary for somebody doing a stream like mine. I mean, my stream is just what some people call a talking head stream, right? So it's just me talking to a camera. So 60 frames per second is absolutely unnecessary. That might be a good idea for somebody who was gaming or something like that, but for my fat head, 30 frames a second will do. So I figured out how to change that in the background, and as a consequence, the stream should be a hell of a lot more stable this evening, which is good. So that's a positive thing. So 30 frames per second. I mean, a lot of people, I don't know if a lot of people realize this. I wouldn't know what the numbers are, but this is a fact I'm aware of because of my love of film. But the average movie, most, if not all films, with rare exception, are actually shot in 24 frames per second. So when you go to the cinema and you watch The Avengers, or you go and see the new James Bond movie, or the latest rom com, or what have you, they're shot in 24 frames per second. So I don't even think I need the 30 frames per second, but I decided I'd try tonight's stream in 30 frames per second just to see how I get on with the connection and so on. The other thing I've realized, and this was thanks to Bob, the person who joined the stream the previous night, is that I wasn't streaming at a high enough bit rate, and so that's why I was encountering buffering issues. People had buffering issues in my previous stream and streams before that, where the screen was becoming pixelated and so on. Really, really ugly and annoying problem. And it turned out that I just wasn't outputting enough bits from OBS to YouTube for YouTube to be able to have a quality stream. And I've since fixed that thanks to the help of Bob. So, Bob, if you're out there, I really sincerely appreciate it. Thank you, my friend. And yeah, for that reason, the video quality should now be improved as well. And the last thing I've actually figured out in this trifecta of discoveries is how to include an audio feature when people submit super chats. So, if I'm not mistaken, and tonight will be the tell, if and when, hopefully when, somebody submits a super chat this evening, you guys should all hear an audio jingle as well, not just me. In theory, the audio should not just be heard in my monitoring earphones here, but it should also be heard by you guys as well, which is quite cool. So we'll see what happens when that happens. But yeah, so forgive the housekeeping issues, forgive the boring and dull tech talk, but if you'll forgive me, I'm actually just quite proud of myself. I'm actually just really thrilled that I am getting better at this. I mean, the fact that I'm streaming now and the live chat is on screen, the fact that I've set it up with stream elements and I've got alerts set up so that when you submit a super chat, your super chat will appear on the screen in this area here. And the fact that I now have an audio cue to go along with that. I mean, and look at this. Wait for it. Wait for it. Look at that. I've got a second camera. So I'm loving it. I'm loving figuring all of this out. It's good fun. And yeah, for an aging idiot like myself, all of this stuff gives me a little bit of a thrill. So if I could get some congratulations there in the chat, that would be very much appreciated. Even if I'll even accept it, even if it's a sarcastic round of applause. I'll take a round of applause in whatever form it's going to arrive, let me tell you. So, yeah, second cam. Second cam, yeah. So I've got my primary camera, I've got my secondary camera, and I've got my stream chat there, and I've got my alerts set up. So you guys will hear an audio cue when somebody submits a super chat. The super chat will appear on the screen in this area here, and I couldn't be happier. So it's all going smoothly, folks. So again, I apologize for the tech talk, but I'm absolutely thrilled with myself. With that all said and out of the way, and we don't have many people in here yet, hopefully a few more people will join. I don't know if Wednesday, I would not normally go live on a night like this. Again, this is more so a test stream just to see how I get on. I would not normally go live on a night like this, but it's the summer. I'm a high school or secondary school teacher, depending on where you're from. And as a consequence, I'm now on my summer holidays, so I have a little bit more wriggle room, a little bit more time. So I'm going to do a few more lives throughout August. That's the plan. The reason I've done a few lives recently is to try and just iron out the tech issues. And as you heard, if you've been listening up to this point, I've ironed out quite a few of them in the last few streams. And so looking at the YouTube studio readout here, actually, it's all looking quite good. According to this, I have an excellent connection and everything is going smoothly. So I'm absolutely delighted. That's fantastic. And yeah, thank you to everybody who's joined already. I know probably a few people have left because I'm boring them to tears with my tech talk. But yeah, the thing I actually wanted to talk about this evening, if you guys will permit me and if you're willing to indulge me and join me in this, was the new Online Safety Act. I don't know if you guys are aware of this or if you've heard about this, but it's interesting, it's worrying, it's potentially good, it's potentially bad, it's potentially a lot of things. But if you're living in the UK, what the government has just done is rolled out a new act, and the Online Safety Act it is known. And essentially what it boils down to, if I'm not mistaken, actually just before I get to that, I should say, if you are watching, it costs you nothing. If you could just drop a like on the live stream, it'll only take you a second. If you could just drop a like, that would be enormously helpful. It'll increase the chances of YouTube recommending the live to others, and we might get more people in here, which would be fantastic. So if you could just take a moment and drop a like on it, that would be absolutely fantastic, and I would sincerely appreciate it. And as I said, it costs you nothing, other than the calorie of energy it's going to require to move your thumb. So I would really appreciate that. And of course, if you are both willing and able, financially able, I would also sincerely appreciate it if you had any questions that you'd like to ask, to submit a super chat, and I'd love to get to your questions as well. So I just said I'd mention that before I continue. But yeah, basically, guys, this new Online Safety Act that's been rolled out by the British government, it sounds awesome on the surface, right? The whole idea. One second before I get to that, I've actually just gotten a super chat, and it comes from. Oh, forgive me if I butcher your name. Mento Ryuzakai. Goodness, I suck at names. Forgive me. I'll just say Mento for now. Mento, thank you very much for the super chat. That's extremely kind. £2 there. I do not take it for granted. It's people like you who keep this channel running. So thank you so much. And Mento asks about my thoughts on Dragon Ball Z. You know what? I'll table my Online Safety Act discussion. I'll come back to it because Mento has been kind enough and generous enough to submit a super chat. So let me tell you my thoughts on Dragon Ball Z. Can we get some hearts and likes for Mento in the chat there? Because that's... Oh, the audio notification is very loud. Okay, I'm going to turn that down straight away. No problem. No problem at all. So let's do that. Right, I've reduced it there by about 30%. So when we get the next, see, this is why I do these streams. Thank you for that, Paddy. This is why I do these streams, because you guys help me to iron out the audio issues and the bugs and problems. So yeah, fantastic. Yeah, so I've just turned that down by 30%. So anyway, getting back to your question, thanks for that, Paddy. Getting back to your question, Mento, thoughts on Dragon Ball Z. I love Dragon Ball Z. I absolutely love Dragon Ball Z. It's so awesome. Dragon Ball Z is very near and dear to my heart for a number of reasons, actually. So, forgive the extended anecdote here, but I think Mento has earned it submitting a super chat there. So let me tell you a quick anecdote, Mento, and you'll get a sense of why I love it so much. The first thing is I'm a 90s baby. So when I was a kid, there were like three channels on the television. In Ireland, you had the state broadcaster called RTE, which is an acronym which stands for Radio Telefís Éireann, which is the Irish language for Radio Television Ireland, basically. And so we had three channels, and obviously Dragon Ball Z wasn't on any of those channels. But when I was still a young lad, I used to travel back and forth to a neighbouring town where my grandmother lived, and I would spend a lot of time there. And my grandmother managed to get, I think, what Americans would call cable before we did in our home house where I lived in the neighbouring town. We didn't have it yet. And my grandmother got cable, and it had Cartoon Network. And Cartoon Network, I don't know if that's a channel that exists in the US of A, but certainly here in the British Isles, Cartoon Network was the place where you'd get all of those prime time awesome cartoons. You were able to watch things like, I don't know, Courage the Cowardly Dog and Dragon Ball Z and that sort of thing. So when I used to go to my grandmother's house, Dragon Ball Z caught my eye straight away as a young kid because it's just so, you know, action packed and bloody and violent, and the fights are awesome, and the characters are cool. Frieza and Majin Buu and Cell and all that good stuff. It's just absolutely awesome. And I fell in love with it as a child in my grandmother's house. And then eventually we got cable as well at our house, and the rest is history. My love for Dragon Ball Z was sealed. In any case, my grandmother, whose house I basically spent half of my childhood in, has died since then, of course, because I'm 33 years of age, and look, nobody lives forever. So she's gone now, and I was incredibly close with her, and I associate her house with Dragon Ball Z, and so I associate Dragon Ball Z with her. And for this reason, I have like this bittersweet relationship with the show now because I own it. I have it on Blu-ray, and whenever I rewatch an episode, I'm taken back to that time where I was sat on the couch on this armchair with the TV this far away from my face, watching Dragon Ball Z, and I absolutely loved it, and still do. You can probably see behind me that there's a bunch of, you know, collectibles and Funko Pops and nonsense. I'm a nerd, as you guys are well aware at this point. If you're familiar with my content at all, you'll know that I'm an absolute nerd. But some of the pops I collect are Dragon Ball Z pops, and I haven't had an opportunity to meet any of the cast, bar one exception. I met I think his first name is Chris Sabat. Sorry, his first name is Chris. His surname Sabat. I think his first name is Chris. Anyway, let me just double check that actually before I make a fool of myself. CHRISB. That his name? Yes, it is. Yeah, Christopher Sabat. Actually, you know what? I have the capability of doing this now, so why don't I just pull this up for you guys? So if I do this, that should now be on your screen, I would hope. So yeah, Christopher Sabat is the guy who plays Vegeta in. Sorry, I'm just turning on my phone there. He's the guy who plays Vegeta in Dragon Ball Z, and I actually got to meet him. No, I can see that that's actually not coming up on screen when I look at the live stream now, rather frustratingly. I don't know why that is, folks. Sorry about that. I'll remedy that problem another day. But yeah, he actually played Vegeta in Dragon Ball Z, and I got to meet him at London Comic Con last year, and it was just so awesome meeting him. He was such a nice guy, so incredibly kind and very generous with his time, and I got him to sign a bunch of Vegeta and Dragon Ball Z Funko Pops. He also, a lot of people might not realize this, he also voiced Shenron, who's the dragon who's in control of the Dragon Balls, and he also voiced some of the Ginyu Force, and he's actually voiced a lot of characters on the show. And anyway, I met him. He was an absolute star. And truth be told, and rather embarrassingly, I actually got upset when I met him. I shed a couple of tears because what I tried to tell him was I grew up. I tried to tell him the story I told you guys. I tried to tell him that, I watched this in my grandmother's house and she's no longer with us. And so I have a very like emotional connection to the show, and I absolutely love your character of Vegeta. And he was just so incredibly kind and generous, and took a bunch of selfies with me even though I hadn't paid for that. That's usually an extra. Wrote a bunch of quotes on my Funko Pops, like it's up to 9,000. He wrote a bunch of quotes even though you're supposed to pay extra for those. But he just did all of these extra freebies, and he was just such an absolute legend of a guy. And they say never meet your heroes and that sort of thing, but I couldn't recommend more highly that you meet Chris Sabat, because he's a really, really kind, beautiful human being, basically. But yeah, that's my little Dragon Ball Z story. I absolutely love Dragon Ball Z. It's fantastic. And yeah, thank you for submitting that super chat, Mentor. That's very kind of you. So, what was I going to say? Yeah, so before I got onto the Dragon Ball Z thing, I was telling you guys about the new Online Safety Act here in the UK, which, as I said, it sounds quite good on the surface, but I think there's some reasons to be concerned about it. The new Online Safety Act proposes to protect children. That's the idea, right? Essentially, what they've done here in the UK is rolled out an age verification, a governmental age verification program, in order to prevent children from accessing what you would call adult content. And adult content doesn't just refer to things like I'm trying to be careful with my terminology here because YouTube is sensitive, but I'm not just referring to the kind of content where people may take off their clothing. We'll put it that way. This is also going to act as a barrier to entry to sites which talk about people who might be considering self-deletion. We'll put it that way. It's also a barrier to entry to Reddit and certain other places where there might be adult content and age, what most people would agree should be age restricted content. And so that's the idea. The problem, I suppose there's a number of problems. The problem is the way they've gone about doing this. In order to verify your age, you now have to submit an ID. So you'd have to upload a picture of your driver's license or your passport or something like that. So if you wanted to access one of those adult websites where people take off their clothes in the UK now, you have to submit a picture of your driver's license or your passport and then a photo of yourself to verify that you are who you claim to be and that sort of thing. And that might not sound like a big deal to some people, but the government has actually outsourced this, given my reading. Now, take all of this with a grain of salt because I'm not an expert on this topic, but my understanding is the government has actually outsourced this age verification technology to third parties. So it's like American companies that are controlling this. So like your picture and your ID and that sort of thing are being stored on foreign servers in foreign countries. And we all know how common data leaks are. I mean, in my short time on this planet already, I've already been the subject of several data leaks where my passwords have been stolen, where my pictures have been stolen, where, like, I remember there was a huge one with PlayStation a number of years back. I've had emails from other companies in the interim saying, oh, definitely change your password, change all this stuff in your account because, passwords have leaked and hackers have gotten access to sensitive information and so on. And so I guess what some people's concern is, and I think it's a fair concern, is that by uploading their passport or their driver's license or some kind of ID to a server in a foreign country, that they're putting themselves at risk of a data leak, but a data link that links them to their sexual proclivities, a data link that links them to the kind of things that they might be searching for on these kinds of websites. Now, others say, listen, if you're just looking at perfectly terrestrial, normal stuff, then I guess you have nothing to worry about, even if it was leaked. But I don't know if that's true. I mean, what if you're a politician and you're in a position of power? What if you're a journalist? What if you're, I don't know, right? I mean, you could be blackmailed so easy if one of these things was leaked, right? But look, that's actually one of the minor issues, I think. I think the bigger issue is that this is so easy to circumvent, so easy to get around. What's to stop a person who's underage just using their dad's ID? What's to stop them just using a VPN, a virtual private network? I mean, just by using a VPN and changing your location settings, you can access anything and everything anyway. So it's also like, there's also this sense in which it's kind of just a waste of time. I mean, maybe it might stop some people, but, you know, I wish my browser was actually working, because for some reason, so if I do this, this is going to look weird, folks. You're going to see picture in picture here. Actually, no, you don't. No, that's fine. That's fine. Um, so yeah, I meant to have a display capture here. There we go. It's on now. Okay, there's my display capture. So that's fine. So I will now actually be able to show you certain things online. Um, so I'm going to Google here how to get around. I'm just going to see what Google says, how easy it would be for someone to get around age verification if they were to Google it. I'm going to click in here to this article from The Telegraph. So this is all about VPNs. Are they legal? Are there risks? See, my understanding is that there are actually free VPNs as well. And because they're free, it's going to be very easy for people to get access to them, right? I mean, there are paid ones. So like NordVPN and those kinds of things. And by the way, I'm not getting paid by Nord. So please don't misunderstand. This isn't an advertisement. But this might be useful to show you guys, and then I'll be able to double check that this actually comes up on screen now that I figured out how to display it. So if I hit this button here, now that should be displayed on your screen as well, folks. Or not. No, it looks like it isn't again. That's very frustrating, guys. See, again, this is why I'm doing these streams. Because I want to I already clicked the button so that the stream would... Okay. So if I go back here again, is that definite? Yeah, that's definitely on display. So that should just work now. Apologies for this, folks. I'm still just figuring this out here. So if I change the source there now, in theory, that should display the website as well. I'm just waiting for it. Ah, okay, so we've got the website now. That's fantastic, right? I don't know why that was bugging out, folks, but it was bugging out, so apologies for that. So if I just show you this article here, so VPNs allowing youngsters to bypass Online Safety Act rules. If I just zoom in on this, it might be more legible. But if you can't read it, folks, that's okay, because I'll just read it for you. So downloads of VPNs have exploded across Britain. Actually, that's a really good point. I was speaking to somebody the other day, and they made such a good point. I wish I'd thought of it, but it would have been a good time to invest in VPN stocks, right? Because the government announced that this was going to come into effect long before it did. So investing in VPN stocks in the weeks leading up to this would have actually been a really smart bet. It would have paid off massively, and the proof is in the pudding. So downloads of VPNs have exploded across Britain since age checks were introduced for content where people take off their clothes and other age restricted websites on Friday. VPN apps have soared to the top of Apple's download charts, while one provider, Proton, said it had seen a 1,800% increase in daily signups. Here's what you need to know about the technology. So I don't think we need to go through necessarily a VPN kind of crash course. I think we know what VPNs are. They change your IP address, and so you can bypass certain location related restrictions. So we won't do that. I just want to get down here to this. So VPNs are legal in Britain, and the Online Safety Act does not change that. The requirements in the new laws are on websites to enforce age checks, not on users to follow through with them. Using a VPN to bypass TV streaming service restrictions is not a criminal offence, but is considered a terms of service violation and could result in a ban. Any illegal online activity, such as watching pirated football games, remains illegal when using one. Yeah, no doubt. What are the risks? Routing all your internet traffic through a single company involves placing a lot of trust in that provider. Yeah, that's fine. We know that. Oh, it looks like we just got a super chat, so I'll come back to this in a moment. No one has sent a super chat yet. Let me be the first. No question. Just wanted to say hi. That's very, very kind of you, Wintermute. You actually were the second person, believe it or not. There was another one, but it might not be showing up in the history of the chat there for some reason. But that's incredibly kind of you to do that. And $5 as well. So I'm going to drop you a little heart there. Can we get some hearts and likes on Wintermute's super chat there? Because they didn't even submit a question. They were just doing it to be nice. So that's incredibly kind. Thank you so much. But yeah, yeah, as you can see, guys, it's trivially easy to get around this problem, to get around these restrictions. So if I change this back to, oh, that's so annoying. If I change this back to number 3. Sorry, I have all of these set on hotkeys, so that's why I get a little bit confused. I'm trying to remember what things I've set for hotkeys. So according to this article in The Telegraph, a recent investigation from the Tech Transparency Project found that some popular VPN apps were routing traffic through China. VPNs are privacy tools, but not silver bullets, as by using one, you're shifting the trust to a private company. Yeah, look, I get that. I get that you're doing that, but when you're using a VPN, I think this might be like a little bit of I don't know that they have an agenda in this article, because VPNs live and die on the trust that the users of the VPN place in them. So if a big story came out that NordVPN was leaking people's data, or NordVPN was giving away people's internet search histories, or storing their search habits, or the kinds of things that they might look at on these websites, or NordVPN was exposing people's IDs and associating those IDs with email addresses and internet search habits, then that would be the end of that VPN. Right? In some sense, the market kind of sorts this out, right? So yeah, I'm sure if you went with a very cheap VPN or a free VPN, you could be in danger. But that might just be another downside of this kind of Online Safety Act, because some people are now going to try and use a cheap or free VPN, and they might be exposed to the kinds of risks that the Telegraph is talking about here. But I don't think that this is a big risk for people who use high-end VPNs, like people who are paying hundreds of pounds per year in order to hide their IP addresses. So I don't think that's a huge concern. I don't think we don't need to know what the politicians are saying. So how do you verify your age under the Online Safety Act? For those simply wishing to get past websites' new age checks, most sites give users a variety of ways to verify that they are over 18. Companies such as X, Reddit, and Discord are allowing people to use software known as facial age estimation, in which they take a short video selfie that uses artificial intelligence to guess whether they are over 18 or not. Other options offered by websites include entering a credit card number or connecting to a bank account, which proves users are over 18, or uploading a government issued ID. That was the one I was talking about. How VPNs get around age verification, well, we know that already. So I think you get the idea, guys. There are multiple ways around this, and it's not a foolproof system. And there's an immense amount of like security concerns. And I just, if it's just that easy, if it's so easy to get around it, if you can just get I mean, granted, a free VPN is going to be more risky, but I mean, are you telling me that like teenagers who I agree shouldn't be accessing adult content? I'm in agreement with the problem. I don't want to be misconstrued here. I accept, understand, and agree that there is a problem with teenagers accessing content that they shouldn't be accessing. So we're in agreement that that's the problem. But I don't think the solution is for the government to introduce a restrictive law which kind of puts everybody in a bad spot. Right, I mean, why should I have to upload my government issued ID to a third party server in the United States and put myself at risk of a data leak? Why should I have to jump through those hoops in order to do something that's entirely legal? Like if I just want to go onto Reddit and read some adult content, or if I want to research self-harming, or if I want to look into self-deletion. I mean, I'm in favor of euthanasia, folks. If I want to just look into that and read about it, I'm now going to have to upload my ID. I'm now going to have to jump through these hoops. I mean, it just seems a bit much when, in fact, in my view, there's a far simpler solution. It's called personal responsibility. I mean, everybody who's got internet in their homes, I'd be interested to get your opinions on this, guys. Everybody who's got internet in their homes has a router or a router, whatever you want to call it. And you can set up parental protections on that device where nobody can access explicit content, nobody can access adult materials. Right? These routers tend to come with these things switched on, and you have to switch it off in order to access adult material. Like, that's how you protect your kids at home. Oh, but how am I going to protect them outside the home? Well, again, that's where good parenting comes in. Right, you can have a phone, you can give your child a smartphone and set it up with a parent app which prevents them from accessing explicit content, and it sends monitoring reports to your phone and so on. Again, this is just about personal responsibility. I mean, I don't want to go too far with this, but look, sugar is harming a lot of people in our society. Sugar is causing a hell of a lot of deaths in our world. People are dying of obesity related illnesses and diabetes and these kinds of things because people are overeating sugar. Imagine now the government introduces a sugar law where the amount of sugar you can purchase per week is extremely limited. But why should I have to suffer when I've been responsible? Why should I have to be restricted when I'm clever enough and responsible enough to go for walks multiple times a week? When I'm clever enough to eat responsibly? When I'm clever enough to make sure that I don't overconsume sugar in any given week and so on? Make sure that I go to the gym, etc. Why should I now be curtailed by a law that the government introduces just because other people aren't willing to be responsible? I get that there's a line. There are certain substances that should be illegal and they shouldn't be up to personal decision, and everybody's going to draw that line at a different point in the sand, and I fully accept and understand that. But it just seems like this particular issue is the wrong side of the line for me. Maybe you'll disagree, dear listener, and if you disagree, that's fair enough. We can have that debate. I'm just a bit frustrated that the government has kind of just introduced this law, and it seems to me not really considered how easy it is to circumvent it and how oppressive it might be to people who are already actually following the rules and doing what's expected of them and so on. I suppose in a nutshell, I get frustrated when the government passes legislation that can be solved by people simply being responsible. right? Now, again, there's a line. I'm not saying I wouldn't be in favor of certain substances becoming legal. Let's say the kind of substance that people tend to inject into their arms, right? That shouldn't become legal on the basis of a personal responsibility argument, because as far as I'm concerned, there's no such thing as responsible usage of such a substance. I think potentially one and done, your life is over, it's ruined, and you become an addict and it's game over for you, right? So obviously there's a limit to the personal responsibility argument, but surely people, even if you don't agree with me, can see where I'm coming from when I say that there's a good personal responsibility defense to be articulated vis-a-vis people's activities online. Parents can very easily have parental protections on their routers at home. They can very easily install parental protection apps on their children's mobile phones. There is no reason why that isn't a better solution as far as I'm concerned. But no, instead, the government goes for the nuclear option and rolls out a nationwide age verification system that now acts as a punitive measure against everyone. All because parents aren't doing their job successfully. All because they're not preventing their children from accessing unpleasant content. All because they just won't learn how to use their technology. Because parents would say, oh, but I don't know how to set that up on my child's phone. Learn! Learn it! Right? Oh, because you're unwilling to learn, now everybody has to suffer with the Online Safety Act? Right? I mean, that's insane. Learn. Do better. Learn how the app works. Learn how to turn on parental controls on your router. Protect your children, for goodness sake. Protect your children. Ugh. Anyway, I probably sound like an absolute curmudgeon right now. I probably sound like a old man screaming at cloud. But yeah, it's just frustrated me, you know. It's irritating. I don't I don't understand. Actually, it looks like my chat has frozen here. Oh no, it's all good. It's all good. It's fine. I thought it had frozen, folks. Sorry about that. But yeah, so like, am I wrong here? You know, am I the idiot? Am I the person who's in the wrong? I mean, it just seems to me that it's a bit much. You know, I mean, what are they doing? What are they doing? Um, I'll always err, much to the chagrin of some. I always err on the side of freedom when it comes to legislation and government overreach. I'll always err on the side of freedom. And obviously, there's going to be situations where freedom isn't the answer and where we actually need to crack down on something. You know, I think speed limits on the road are a fair idea. They're a good idea. Um, YouTube is not receiving enough video. I just got an error message, folks. I'm just going to have a quick peek at that. I can actually increase. Let me go to settings and output. I can actually increase the kilobytes that I output. Let's up it slightly. See if that remedies the issue, folks. Let me know if you got a buffering issue there. If you got a buffering issue, I would like to know, because those kinds of issues are what I'm here to resolve, folks. Again, I want to iron out all of these issues before I start doing more of these streams. Part of why I'm doing this is to make sure that it's all functioning correctly. Also, when I got that other super chat from Wintermute a moment ago, you should have heard a audio cue on your end. The last time somebody submitted a super chat, it was said that it was a bit too loud. So I would love to know if Wintermute's audio cue when they submitted a super chat, if that audio cue was excessively loud. If it was, let me know and I'll turn it down a little bit further, because I don't want to annoy people with oppressively loud notifications. So, what are people saying? That's funny. Stream, yeah, see, that's frustrating now. It's saying stream status poor. And I don't know why it's doing that. It seemed fine to me. Thank you, Wintermute. I appreciate that. It wasn't too loud then. No buffering issues here, and the super chat audio was all good. Fantastic. Yeah, it was just the first one. When the first one came through, a person made me aware that it was a bit too loud, and so I turned down the volume of the super chat alert by about 30%. So in theory, it should now be a reasonable volume. It shouldn't be too oppressive when people hear it. And according to you guys, that's exactly what's happened. Somebody writes, can you perform a live magic trick that makes a point about atheism, Christianity, belief, or reality? I don't even need to perform it to tell you this. I can just tell you that each and every magic trick that you've ever seen is fake. Magic is illusory, just like religion. So every magic trick you've ever seen has been the perfect analogy, the perfect microcosm of what religion is. So there you go. Oh, that's funny. That is funny. Yeah, I'm pleased now, guys. I must admit, with the way the stream is functioning, I'm happy with the thing, with the audio cues and stuff. That's fantastic. So yeah, I just wanted to search up one other article here that I was looking at earlier, that I want to show you guys. Okay, so here's the one on Sky News. Okay, I'm going to show you guys this one, this article from Sky News, because it like this needs to be known. For any of you who have tuned in a bit later, let me just fill you in briefly on what I'm talking about. So in the UK, just recently, just in the last few days, in fact, they've passed this legislation called the Online Safety Act, which has rolled out a nationwide age verification system whereby to access adult content now, you're expected to submit details about your bank account or details about your government issued ID, a photograph of yourself, a picture of your ID, passport, driving license, something like that. So in order to access content where, again, I'm referring to it in kind of ambiguous words, in order to access content that is, shall we say, involving people taking off their clothes, you now have to submit all of these details, and that raises, I would say, obvious security risks, obvious safety risks for the person submitting their ID, right? Are you going to be the subject of a data leak? Is your data safe in a foreign country server controlled by third parties? It's not like this goes to a governmental database. Not that that would make it any safer, really, because government databases have been hacked and exposed as well in the past. So there's all sorts of security concerns about this. But what I was also telling you guys is that this isn't even an effective piece of legislation, because the very same day the act rolled out and suddenly there were age restriction notices coming up on websites when you tried to enter them, people figured out how to get around it in the very first day without much bother, without much hassle. Speaking of which, that's why I wanted to show you this. That's a very big, annoying ad that's probably going to stay on my screen, isn't it? I'm going to zoom in such a way as to kind of thwart that ad, folks, before I switch. There we go. Yeah. That will do the trick. Fantastic. Right, so this comes from Sky News, guys, and as I said, I'm going to put this on the screen for you right now. So this should come up on your screen right away. So age verification tools on adult websites bypassed in seconds. Right? Using widely available technology, well-known ethical hackers Chris, not going to try and pronounce that name. No, I won't. And Paula, again, forget about it. I'm not going to even bother because I'll just look like a moron. Quickly accessed numerous websites where people take off their clothing, sites without ever verifying their ages. So have a look at this. Ethical hackers have shown Sky News how new age verification systems can be bypassed on adult websites in a matter of seconds. On Friday, toughened rules came into force that mean companies hosting adult content online must block under 18s using highly effective age verification. Highly effective. That could include AI tools that use pictures to estimate someone's age, bank, or ID checks. But hours later, two ethical hackers working with the cyber training group, the Hacking Games, demonstrated just how simple it is to get around the measures designed to protect young people on the internet. Using widely available technology, these people quickly accessed numerous adult sites without ever verifying their ages. Their devices were running standard software and the tricks they used were simple. And this showed the systems will not be effective at stopping under 18s from accessing explicit content online. The simplicity of their method was confirmed by multiple viewers who contacted Sky News to say they had also managed to bypass the systems. One viewer said it had taken him less than 30 seconds. I'll say that again. Less than 30 seconds. Right? That is nuts. Less than 30 seconds. Although Sky News has verified the methods used, we won't give details or name any software used. So Sky News is playing it kind of safe here. They don't want to be broadcasting these simple methods. I mean, I've already broadcast one of them, VPNs, and there are some free ones. But apparently there are some other methods as well, and it's literally a 30-second Google away, and suddenly you get around these websites or the age verification systems. Some of the explicit websites they checked had not turned on any age verification, despite declaring in June that they would. In response to our findings, Ofcom said these checks will help stop young children from stumbling across adult content. The regulator added, while the new rules have only been in place for a matter of hours, we will be actively assessing compliance to make sure platforms have age checks in place and that they are highly effective. Companies that fall short can expect to face enforcement action. This is the other problem, right? This is the other side of it that I didn't actually mention. And I think it's a totally fair concern. These companies, and we're not just talking about adult websites that host content where people take off their clothes, we're talking about websites like Reddit or perhaps even Twitter, which has become something of a cesspit since Elon Musk took over. I mean, I'm no defender of Twitter and Reddit and so on. They can be particularly pernicious and unpleasant places, but I'm not convinced that they deserve to be punished for it. I'm not convinced that it's their fault if a child accesses their content. You see, again, this becomes an issue of responsibility. I mean, movies, for example, will put an 18 rating or a rated or some kind of adult certification on a film that's not meant to be seen by children. It's hardly the fault of the film producers or Hollywood if children end up seeing that film. If your kids manage to download that film from the internet, or they end up taking a loan of their friends, I'm aging myself here with physical media, if they borrow their friend's Blu-ray or DVD and they end up watching it, that's not the fault of the DVD producer or the director or the film production company or Hollywood. That is the fault of the parents for not doing a good job parenting. I feel like the exact same principle applies here. If there is adult content on Reddit, it's the fault of parents if their kids get access to that. Parents need to activate their parental controls on their children's phones. They need to activate parental controls on their routers at home, on their internet and their Wi-Fi at home in their house. Right? This is not the fault of the company providing the service. It's the fault of the parents allowing their children or not monitoring their children when they access this stuff. I mean, that's my take on this. I mean, call me an idiot if you must, but that's genuinely what I think about this, folks. So, the regulator added, while the new rules have only been in place for a matter of hours, we'll be actively assessing compliance to make sure platforms have age checks in place and that they are highly effective. Companies that fall short can expect to face enforcement action. That's not fair in my view. Now, granted, if you are a provider of children's content, If you're providing children's content and it's not age restricted as a consequence, and adult content ends up there, that is entirely the fault of the producer. Of course. Of course. If your kids are watching kids' TV, Saturday morning cartoons, and suddenly they're exposed to something explicit or adult, that is the fault of the kids' TV station. Somebody messed up somewhere. That's totally fine. But don't let's pretend that these websites don't already make it clear. If you go and you try to access explicit websites, it already comes up and says, you must be an adult to view this content. Click here to confirm that you are an adult. Right? Now, that doesn't bring you through an age verification, and obviously kids have just been lying and confirming that they're adults even though they're not. I get that. I get that entirely. Children are going to lie, right? But who's to blame for that? The website or the parents? You know my view. You make up your own mind. A spokesperson from the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology told Sky News, "We expect these laws to be robustly implemented by tech companies. If they fail to do so, the regulator is ready to take severe enforcement action, including tough fines." Absolute garbage. Why don't you start fining the parents? Why don't you do that? Why don't you roll out legislation that fines parents for their children accessing adult content? And then all of the, I don't know how to enable parental controls, that would go out the window pretty damn sharpish, wouldn't it? That'd go out the window pretty damn fast. I mean, am I talking double Dutch here? Am I wrong? Am I insane? Maybe I am. Maybe I'm an idiot. I don't know. I'm open to having my mind changed on this. My view on this isn't set in stone, so feel free to challenge me, but honestly, this is my take for now. Perhaps my intuitions are just completely upside down, inside out, and backwards on this. There is also a risk that age verification could push users towards more dangerous corners of the internet in search of adult content. Yes, that is another major concern. That is a major concern, right? Think about it. There is also a risk that age verification could push users towards more dangerous corners of the internet in the search for adult content. So, in other words, if a teenager can't access the standard adult websites that you and I could probably name, I'm not going to name them in this video because, again, I want to protect my channel from the unwanted attention of the censors. If a teenager cannot access, and by child I mean teenager, of course, if a 15-year-old cannot access the usual websites that they've been accessing up to this point, they are potentially going to go further and find more strange stuff in the internet. They might even go so far as accessing the dark web. And all bets are off then, folks. They're going to be exposed to the illegal black market. They're going to be exposed to illegal adult content. And I won't even go into describing what that means for the sake of your constitution, not least because I'll get sick myself. But all bets are off then, if that's the direction they go. You see the problem with this? So, by 10 a.m. on Friday, data suggested an extra 66,000 internet users in the UK had begun using... Oh my God. I swear on all that I hold dear that I did not read this article in advance. Cross my heart and hope to die. I did not read this article in advance. And the very next sentence was exactly what I said. Look at that figure. Oh my God, that is shocking. I'm going to read that sentence again. By 10 a.m. on Friday, data suggested an extra 66,000 internet users in the UK had begun using the dark web. Gee, I wonder what they found there. Right? Suddenly, a conventional and legal website which serves up explicit content where people remove their clothes, explicit but legal, doesn't seem so bad anymore by my lights, rather. And I mean that genuinely. And again, none of this is to suggest that it's acceptable or a good thing that teenagers are accessing this kind of content, legal or otherwise. It's not a good thing. But if they're going to access it, would you prefer they accessed the legal variety or the illegal variety? Because look what's happening. 66,000 extra people accessing the dark web on Friday after this age verification system rolled out. That's shocking to me, folks. I'm not going to lie. That is absolutely shocking. I can't quite believe that. So the expert that they're interviewing for this article fears that this number may only increase. That is one of the concerns that I have, because I don't want illegal or extreme content being normalized in our teens, she said. Google Trends data shows searches for online tools to help people bypass age verification have surged too. No shit, Sherlock. Ofcom told Sky News it had been clear that sites must not encourage or direct users to get around age checks, hence the reason that this particular article is keeping their cards close to their chest in terms of outing these various methods. Please notice that they're not instructing the viewer as to how to circumvent these age restrictions. But that's because the regulator, Ofcom, has threatened people. And I suppose I better put in a little defense for myself here. I have not instructed anybody on how to do this, right, in this video. I've mentioned VPNs, but I've not instructed anybody on how to use a VPN or how they function or anything of the sort, right? But the key point is, these methods of getting around age verification are just a Google away, 30 seconds away, according to this article. And yet the government thinks that this is a good age verification program. People should be aware that children and adults who use certain software to bypass age checks will not benefit from the wider protections offered by our online safety rules. Despite those warnings, in the days running up to the rules being enforced, advertising data shows companies were targeting UK users and promoting tools that could bypass the verification. Of course, make hay while the sun is shining. Platforms have clear legal obligations and must actively prevent children from circumventing safety measures, including blocking content that promotes workarounds targeting young users. So there you have it, folks. I mean, it's a bit of a nightmare. It's a bit of a nightmare what's going on here in the UK at the moment. And I mean, I don't have all the answers. I don't know if there's a better solution out there in order to prevent kids from accessing adult content, but I do know that this isn't the solution. This can't be the solution. There's just too many risks. It's too oppressive. It's too dangerous. And it's not going to achieve the desired result. As we just heard, 66,000 extra people access the dark web as a consequence, a number that's almost certainly going to rise. I mean, if the government was looking at banning a particular drug, and the banning question led to a 66,000 surge in that particular drug, or another way of accessing that drug, then we'd probably say that that was a pretty ineffective law or rule, wouldn't we? If the law that was passed in order to prevent people consuming this particular drug could be circumvented in a mere 30 seconds, I think we'd probably all agree that it was a pretty crappy law, that the legislation wasn't very well thought through. And yet that's precisely the position we find ourselves in. Yeah, I mean, only in England, folks. Only in England, huh? What a strange world we live in. What a strange world we live in. I have to admit, and I know I've got a lot of American viewers, so I'm probably going to be accused of buttering you guys up here, but I got to admit, I do admire, for better or for worse, the USA's commitment to freedom. I mean, even your freedom of speech is a hell of a lot broader than ours is, right? Your constitution guarantees the right of freedom of speech. You can actually say what you think. We don't have that here in the UK. Section 5 of the Public Order Act makes it an offence to say or display anything that could cause harassment, alarm, or distress. That's the precise wording of the legislation here in the UK. And that legislation has been used to silence people. People on both the left and the right, I might add. This no particular person has a monopoly on this. To improve your performance, let Chrome make it inactive. Oh God, no, we're not going to make this tab inactive. Absolutely not. So yeah, that's the problem we have in the UK. We've got these kind of gung ho politicians who are all too ready to ban something, all too ready to introduce oppressive restrictions, all too ready to make people's lives more difficult. By the way, just before I finish and wrap a nice neat bow around this, if you are watching and you've joined recently, it'll only take you a second and it'll cost you nothing. Could you just please drop a like on the video? It costs you nothing. It'll take you a second and it'll help out the stream enormously. It'll help out the channel enormously. I'd really appreciate that. If you could just drop a like on it, that would be very much appreciated. And better still, if you are both willing and financially able, please submit a super chat and I'll answer a question for you. And that helps out the channel even more. Super chatters and people who join my Patreon and so on are the lifeblood of the channel. So I would very much appreciate it if you could submit a super chat. So I thank you in advance for doing both of those things if you can. In any case, yeah, I just feel like this part of the world, the British government, is just all too prepared to be kind of Orwellian in their approach to solving problems, where they introduce oppressive and frankly dangerous and irresponsible legislation, when the real solution is just so damn obvious. Just be responsible parents. Just raise your kids right and have parental protections on their phones and have parental protections on the Wi-Fi in your home, and you're all good. And then you'll say, oh, but what if they access it in another parent's house who's less responsible? Well, then don't let your kids go to that house. I don't have kids, but I wouldn't let my kids go to the house of an irresponsible parent. Oh, but then my kid will be angry with me. Yeah, let them be angry with you. You're the adult. I mean, forgive me for giving parenting advice. This is going to be a very unpopular stream. I realize that now. These things I'm saying are not going to go down well. It's a bit too much like finger wagging, isn't it? But you'll have to forgive me, folks. I'm just a bit pissed off because I live in England. You know, I can see the comments right now. Oh, Magic Skeptic's really pissed off because he can't get his sexual kicks anymore. He can't access those websites he was really enjoying. Well, guys, I have a VPN, right? So I'm all good. I've been using a VPN for years now, for multiple reasons, long before this age verification system came in. So I ain't got any problems, right? My life is unchanged as a consequence of this legislation. I'm talking about this because I can see the writing on the wall. I can see the problems with it. I can see the security risks. I can see the ineffectiveness of it. I can see the unfairness of it, where companies are now going to be held to account because parents are irresponsible. I mean, that's bullshit. That's completely unfair. Or your child accessed my over 18 content, which was labelled as such, so now that's my problem. I mean, get out of here. Get out of here. But, you know, leave it to the British government, as I said. Just idiots. Absolute clowns. I mean, I don't understand how this stuff gets by its first table read and how anybody signs off on it and thinks that it's a good idea. It's just complete hogwash. But again, like I said, it's typical, right? Section 5 of the Public Order Act. Let me give you 2 examples of where this was enforced here in the UK, and they're just absolutely appalling, each of them. And one of them is a left-wing example, and the other one is a right-wing example. And I want to give you the left and the right-wing example, because some people think that this kind of legislation is kind of monopolized by the left, and some people think that this kind of legislation is monopolized by the right and so on, and that's not actually necessarily the case. Both sides of the political aisle have been hurt by Section 5 of the Public Order Act. So the first example is from a few years back when Boris Johnson was still the Prime Minister of England. And there was a woman who was protesting in London, and she was wearing a t-shirt that said F Boris Johnson with a middle finger emoji. So she wasn't a fan. And she was approached by police who instructed her to cover up the t-shirt or she was going to be arrested. And she said, "Why am I going to be arrested?" And because, says the police officer, you are displaying a word that could cause harassment, alarm, or distress. The word fuck. Oh, oh goodness. I live in England and I might have just caused harassment, alarm, and distress by saying the F word. Goodness, I hope I don't get reported. Because if I do, I actually may have the police arrive to my front door and threaten me with arrest or a fine for uttering a phrase that is considered unpleasant, that could potentially cause harassment, alarm, or distress. You want to talk about Orwellian, folks? That's Orwellian. So this woman, on the precipice of arrest, has no choice but to put on her hoodie or her jacket, coat, can't remember what it was she was wearing, in order to evade arrest, in order to avoid being put in handcuffs and driven away in a police car. I mean, that is absolutely appalling. So, let me give you one other example. This example is perhaps even more egregious. And you might be surprised by my intuitions and thoughts on this, given my stated moral positions on various things. But there was this preacher here in the UK. Now, I forget where this was. This wasn't London. It was somewhere else, but I've forgotten the location. But I actually did a video on this quite a number of years back, which you can go back and check if you're interested. This preacher, not something I agree with, but he was preaching about the sinfulness of gay marriage. First of all, I don't believe sin is real. I think sin is tied to a God, and I don't believe God exists. So the whole concept of sin is nonsensical to me. And secondly, I think gay people should be allowed to get married and be miserable like all of the other married people, as is their want. Off you go. So I don't agree with this guy. But I do agree that he has a right to speech, that he has freedom of speech. So while I don't agree with what he's saying, I agree with his right to say it. That is the whole point of freedom of speech. Freedom of speech does not exist in your society if you do not permit those with whom you disagree to speak. How could it be free speech if you're only allowed to say things that I agree with? It just makes absolutely no sense. So while I find this guy to be a bigot, I find his point of view to be despicable, I disagree with him. I think the correct response is to stand opposite him with a megaphone and start preaching about why gay marriage is actually no big deal and why gay people should have the exact same rights as everybody else. The right to marry is a human right and should be afforded to all humans, assuming they're at the age of consent, of course. So, in any case, this guy is preaching about the sinfulness of gay marriage, something that I think is despicable and awful for him to say, but he's saying it. Somebody calls the police and the police show up, and this guy did not evade arrest. He was dragged away, I dare say, violently. This guy was an old man. He was like in his 70s or 80s, and he gets dragged away like a rag doll by the police officers because he's preaching a biblical view, and it is a biblical view. The Bible makes its position on homosexuality quite clear. I mean, I'm not actually sure that there's a statement specifically on gay marriage as such, but I think you're kidding yourself if you read the Bible and you don't interpret it as a heteronormative document. Like, one of the quotes in the Bible that comes to mind is, what God has joined together, let no man separate. That's about marriage, so marriage shouldn't end. And the other quote was, oh, what was it? There's a particular quote about man and woman. No, it's gone from my head, folks. You'll have to forgive me. If you're familiar with that biblical quote that's at the tip of my tongue there, drop it into the chat box and help me out. But I can't recall it exactly. But in any case, the key point is that this guy was dragged away for the crime of uttering a bigoted point of view, admittedly, but dragged away because people found it to be alarming and distressing. And that's just an insane standard. I'm sorry, folks. That's an insane standard. I mean, I don't agree with them, but bigots like that preacher find LGBTQ plus parades to be alarming and distressing because they disagree with that. That isn't a good enough reason to have the parade shut down and have those people arrested and dragged away. Of course not. And so if we can't shut down the Pride Parade on the basis of harassment, alarm, and distress, then we also and equally cannot shut down this preacher's right to speak. I mean, granted, if it drifts into violent rhetoric, you're not allowed. I think that's the one and only limitation that I think everybody agrees with on freedom of speech. You don't have the freedom to stand up and encourage violence against any particular group or person. I think we're all agreed on that. Fine. But I don't think it's fair to say that a preacher saying that marriage should be between man and woman encourages violence. I think you'd have a pretty difficult task on your hand if you were to try and make that case. So the point is, and to make a very long story short, the UK has this history, I think, of being quite Orwellian, whether it is Labour that's in power or the Conservatives that are in power, whether it's the left wing that are in control or the right wing that are in control. It doesn't appear to matter who's in control. The UK has this real Orwellian, oppressive bent to its legislative history. I think Section 5 of the Public Order Act makes that crystal clear, and I think in this last week, the new Online Safety Act has made that crystal clear as well. And there are other examples we could get into, but I don't want to bore you guys to tears. So, for anybody who joined late, first of all, drop a like on the video. It helps out the channel enormously. And if you are willing and financially able, please do consider submitting a super chat. That would be very much appreciated as well. Super chatters and people who join my Patreon are the lifeblood of this channel, so that would be very much appreciated. But the context is the Online Safety Act, for anybody who joined late, where the UK government has just rolled out this legislation where now, if you're going to access adult content in the UK, you have to submit a photographic ID, a government issued ID, like a passport or a driver's license, or you have to submit your bank account, or you have to submit some kind of proof that you are the age that you are alleging to be. And on the surface, this seems fine. It seems smart. Let's protect the children. Let's stop kids from accessing adult content, which is something we all agree on. Kids shouldn't be accessing adult content. I just don't believe that this is the solution. This is an oppressive piece of legislation that's ineffective, unfair, and dangerous. It's ineffective because, as I read in the article from Sky News just a moment ago, for those of you who joined late, you can scroll back or sift back through the video later on and you'll see that Sky News spoke to a number of hacking experts, and they pointed out more or less that you don't have to be a hacker in order to get around this. It takes 30 seconds for the average person to Google a solution to the age verification problem, where there are all sorts of means and methods of getting around it. And what the Sky News article also revealed, which is absolutely terrifying, is that the number of people who access the dark web shot up by 66,000 in a single day in the UK because of their inability to access the legal adult content that they're accustomed to accessing. So people have gone to the dark web in order to get their kicks, which exposes them to both legal and illegal adult content. Content involving minors, for example. Or exposure to the black market, where you can buy and sell all sorts and manner of illegal stuff, weapons and illegal substances and so forth. So this legislation is just an absolute nightmare. I've just had a stream drop there. That's frustrating. Let me just fix that. You might experience a slight buffer for a moment there, folks, and that's okay. It'll fix in a moment, so it shouldn't be too big of a problem. But in any case, yeah, people are very easily circumventing this legislation. They're getting around it. It's not difficult to get around in the slightest. And it's also exposing those who are going to abide by it to risk, because your ID and your bank account is being sent to a third party. The government is not doing it in-house. It's like American companies and so on. So your ID and your bank account and all the rest of it are going to be stored on foreign servers in foreign countries, and we all know how at risk you are to data leaks and that sort of thing if that were to happen. It's just an absolute nightmare. It's a nightmare, and as we've seen, it's actually driving people to extremes where they're now accessing the dark web, which is a whole hell of a lot more dangerous. And according to the Telegraph and the Sky News articles that I read, people are getting around this without any problem at all. It's taking them 30 seconds to circumvent the legislation and to get around the age verification methods, the age verification systems. So it's just completely ineffectual, a complete waste of time, and a dangerous piece of legislation that's also punitive and unfair. As I said earlier, it's going to punish the providers of this content unfairly, in my view. If I have a website and I stipulate that this website is for over 18s, and when you click into the website, it asks you to confirm that you're 18 just with a tick box. We just got a super chat. I'll get to that in one moment, Nigel. Then I've done my duty, haven't I? I've told you that it's over 18s. If you access it anyway, that's on you if you're under 18. It's on your parents for not being smart enough, for not putting parental controls on your phone, or for not having parental controls active on the Wi-Fi in the home. This is a personal responsibility issue. But the government has made it everybody's problem. And that's the part that really pisses me off. So let me get to Nigel's super chat here. Nigel, thank you so much for the €5 super chat. That's incredibly kind. What are you saying? Yeah, gun to your head, basically. If you had to subscribe to one of today's major religions and participate in their beliefs and rituals, which one would you choose? Oh, when you said gun to your head, I thought you were talking about the Online Safety Act and how a gun is basically being put to people's heads. So, Nigel, that's a great question. I'm just going to drop a heart on that, Nigel. Thank you so much. And I'm going to answer that. Guys, could you drop a like on Nigel's comment there? Because that's very kind of Nigel to submit a super chat. As I keep saying, guys, super chatters and members of my Patreon are the lifeblood of this channel. And I'm indebted to you. So thank you so much, Nigel, for submitting that super chat. And let me answer your question. So, with a gun to my head, if I had to subscribe to one of today's major religions and participate in their beliefs and rituals, which one would you choose? This is actually a really easy answer for me, Nigel. Believe it or not. Really, really easy answer for me. I would join the Buddhist faith. Buddhism is my favorite religion by miles. And I'll tell you why. I find Buddhism, and some of you, I'm going to piss some people off with what I'm about to say here. I find Buddhism, Nigel, I find it actually very persuasive in some of its claims. Not its supernatural claims, but its psychological claims. I find it very, very persuasive. And its kind of diagnosis of the human condition, its assessment of the human condition, I find it to be very, very persuasive. And let me unpack a little bit of that, and I'll tell you what my thoughts are, Nigel. So, for starters, Buddhism makes a very basic claim. The first noble truth: suffering exists. Everyone suffers. It is a universal condition. If you're conscious, and this doesn't just include human beings, it includes animals as well. If you are conscious, you will suffer. It is part of what it means to be alive, right? So I agree with that, of course. Life contains an immense amount of suffering. There are very big examples, awful examples, and there are some minor examples. So a minor example might include something as simple as you finished your dessert, your pudding, your ice cream, or whatever it is you've been eating, and you're sad that it's gone. Oh, I wish I had more of that. That's a very minor example, but it is an example of suffering nonetheless. Little bit more serious than that. You scrape your knee when you fall as a kid. Ouch. Doesn't end the world, but it's an example of suffering. On the other end of the spectrum, you've got the more serious examples where we lose loved ones, where we suffer with depression, and we have thoughts of self-deletion and harming and all of this kind of stuff, right? So I don't think anybody could deny that life contains an immense amount of suffering. We all grow old, we get sick, and we die. This is what Buddha discovered when he left the palace. Buddha had a life of luxury. He was unaware of the existence of old age, sickness, and death because his dad pampered him and hid these realities from him, almost like an overactive helicopter parent who pushed their protection of their child too far. Something that the parents of today aren't doing, hence the reason the British government has had to roll out age protection in lieu of parents just doing it themselves in the home. There you go. I just managed to link the two. Come on, come on. That was good. That was good. Give me some credit. But Buddha discovers old age, sickness, and death, and he realizes that these are universal truths. It doesn't matter how much money you have, doesn't matter where you're born in the world, doesn't matter the color of your skin, your sex, your gender, none of that matters. We all get old, get sick, and die. And that's those of us who are lucky, because some people die young. Right? So life includes an immense amount of suffering. The second thing that's really persuasive about Buddhism is that Buddha's diagnosis of suffering is that it's caused by attachment, or more specifically, greed, hatred, and delusion. That's what causes suffering. And I find that, yet again, Nigel, to be a very persuasive claim. If you think about anything that's ailing you at this point in time in your life, what you'll probably realize is that it's being made a hell of a lot worse by greed, hatred, and delusion. So, I sometimes get frustrated when the traffic light goes red just as it was coming to my turn to drive through it, and then I have to stop. Why do I suffer there? It's because I'm suffering from a delusion. I have this delusion in my head that my kind of journey from A to B should be kind of continuous. Like, I shouldn't encounter any barriers. Nothing should get in my way. But that's a ridiculous, delusory belief. Right? When I finish my dessert and I feel that, oh, I wish I had more, that's greed. I'm suffering because of greed. When people get frustrated with, I don't know, they get angry with their neighbor because their neighbor has a new fancy car, that's hatred. Right? I think Buddhism diagnoses our human condition quite well. Now, some people would say, oh, but if I'm in a battle and I get shot in the arm and my arm is bleeding, the pain that I have in that moment isn't caused by greed, hatred, and delusion. Sure, but we're not talking about the physiological phenomenon of pain, which is felt as a consequence of motor neuron signals and neural firings and so on. Buddhism isn't articulating a physiological or anatomical thesis. It's talking about suffering, which is distinct from pain. I think that's an important thing to keep in mind, that suffering is distinct from pain. Because some pain people enjoy. If pain was just a bad thing, then why do some people enjoy it? Right? Some people in the bedroom will enjoy certain forms of pain. Some people, when they're getting tattoos, will experience a sense of euphoria as the needle places the ink into their skin and so on. They get a buzz from it, right? So clearly we're not talking about physiological pain. We're talking about suffering, right? We're talking about suffering, which is a psychological state of being. You could be suffering while your motor neuron signals are actually conferring upon you a sense of pleasure, right? That sounds like a strange thing to do. But like, I don't know, somebody who's addicted to certain substances that they might inject into their arm, their psychological experience might be one of euphoria, but they're suffering. Right? They're suffering an immense amount. Their body is undergoing an immense amount of turmoil there. And the very reason they're doing this in the first place is probably because they're suffering, and when they awake from their slumber, their drug-induced slumber, they're going to be suffering yet again, and so on. So like, suffering is a separate concept in my view from physical pain. And what a Buddhist will say is that suffering is caused by greed, hatred, and delusion. So let me give you a very simple example. Let's imagine a person is in a car crash and they lose their legs. There's two ways of looking at that. You can have the glass half full or the glass half empty perspective. And the person who has the glass half empty perspective and who suffers as a consequence, a Buddhist will argue that that's because of greed, hatred, and delusion. So the person who suffers because they've lost their legs and they decide to themselves, that's it, my life is over. What else can I do now? I can't walk anymore. I used to love running, and I'll never stand up again. I'll be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life. My life is over. It's a glass half empty. Now, I'm not here to judge anybody who feels that way. If that's happened to them, I would probably feel this way as well. I'm not lecturing anybody. I'm just trying to give you a little insight into what Buddhists might say. But please notice that the reason that person is suffering is because they've got this glass half empty attitude that their life is over. The other person who loses their legs looks at that and they decide to themselves, you know what? I'm lucky because I could have died, but here I am. I survived. I made it. And furthermore, I'm not going to allow this to define my life. I can go on and still achieve great things, despite my disability. Look at Stephen Hawking, right? I mean, he had, was it ALS, I think he had? Degenerative muscle disease or something like that, where this guy is wheelchair bound for most of his life, and he still becomes a best-selling author, accomplished scientist, and so on. Right, you can be very seriously disabled and still achieve great things. And the difference between these two people, person A who decides their life is over and person B who decides their life is just beginning, the thing that separates them, the thing that explains the difference, according to a Buddhist, is greed, hatred, and delusion. Person A is suffering from the delusion that your life is over if you become disabled. They might be suffering from hatred because they hate what happened to them. Right? They might be suffering from some kind of greed. They might think that life owes them more or something like that. Person B decides their life is just beginning and they're lucky they survived and they may go on to achieve great things in the Special Olympics, or they may go on to achieve great things in writing or career, or who knows? Who knows? The sky's the limit. And so, look, I've spent a long time answering this question, Nigel, and I'm sure you weren't expecting a soliloquy of this length, so I apologize if I've blown the head off you here. But I find Buddhism to be very persuasive for this reason. I find its psychological claims are quite accurate to my own psychological experience of the world. I find its diagnosis of the human condition to be quite compelling. I think they're right that suffering is a universal phenomenon, and that we have no choice but to contend with it. I mean, I just think they're spot on. I think they're on to something there. The last thing I'll say, and then I'll wrap a neat bow around this, Nigel, I wanted to get this last point out, is that I much prefer the way Buddhism formulates its ethical rules and principles. So I'll give you 2 examples. In the 10 Commandments, it says, "Thou shalt not steal and thou shalt not lie." The problem with those formulations is that they're ambiguous enough that a liar or a thief can justify their dishonesty and their thievery and still delude themselves into believing that they're following those commandments. I'll give you 2 examples. It says thou shalt not steal, but is finders keepers stealing? If I find somebody's wallet on the way home and I keep the money inside, have I really stolen that money? I mean, it's not like I snuck into the guy's house or pickpocketed him or something. I've just found something on my way home and I'm keeping it. Thou shalt not steal doesn't really make clear that finders keepers is wrong. So how do the Buddhist moral precepts word this? And I just love this. What the Buddhist moral precepts say is that one should abstain from taking what has not been rightly given. That's how it's worded. Abstain from taking what is not rightly given. And I absolutely love that, because suddenly it becomes clear that finders keepers is not cool. Because the question becomes, when I find that wallet, has this wallet been rightly given to me? And the obvious answer to that question is no. It hasn't been rightly given to you. If you find it on the floor, it's absolutely absurd in the extreme to claim that this wallet was rightly given to you. Obviously, it hasn't been. This wallet has been found, so it's not been rightly given to you. I've just noticed, by the way, that my light on the left-hand side is fading. So just give me one moment, folks. I'm going to plug in that light so that it can start charging again. Give me a moment. There we go. That should do it. So that light is now plugged back in. So that's the first example. So let me give you the second example. As I said, the other example is thou shalt not lie. But does that include gossiping? Does thou shalt not lie include the idea that you shouldn't gossip? And again, that's not clear when you read thou shalt not lie. So how did the Buddhist moral precepts put it? Well, the Buddhist moral precepts say to abstain from false speech. Is gossiping false speech? Well, yeah, it is. If you're passing on stories that you've heard from somebody else, they're not exactly your lies. You're not lying because you're just passing it on, but you are potentially engaging in false speech. And again, I just really like the way that's formulated. I think it does a better job of encapsulating a broader set of rules. And actually, I'll give you one more example. This is the cherry on top. The commandments say, "Thou shalt not kill," but it seems to be human-centered. It's not like the Bible has much of a concern for the welfare of animals. I mean, Jesus multiplies the loaves and the fishes, so clearly no concern with eating fish. It's not a vegetarian or a vegan document, evidenced by the fact that I think there's one story where Jesus banishes some spirits into pigs and then runs them off a cliff. So Jesus clearly isn't interested in the welfare of animals, is he? But instead of saying thou shalt not kill, Buddhists in the moral precepts say, and let me get this right in my head before I say it, abstain from harming or killing sentient creatures. Sentient creatures. That's the way it words it. So in other words, Buddhists broaden their moral circle, their circle of consideration, and they include protections for animals. So from a Buddhist perspective, harming or killing sentient creatures is wrong. That includes human animals and non-human animals. And I like that. I think that's quite a positive thing about Buddhism. So yeah, the short answer is there's lots of reasons why I like Buddhism and why I would join it if I had to join a world faith. I'm not going to join it. I'm not going to join a world faith because despite the fact that I find Buddhism's psychological subtleties and ethical claims persuasive, I'm just not sold on the supernatural claims. I don't believe that there's a wheel of samsara and that we die and that we have karmic energy and we're potentially reborn depending on our karmic energy and so on. I don't believe that there's a pure land and that there's a Buddha of infinite love. I don't believe any of that woo. I don't believe any of that mumbo jumbo. So I'm not a Buddhist. I'm not going to be a Buddhist anytime soon. It's not going to happen. But if somebody put a gun to my head, as the questioner asked, as Nigel asked, if somebody put a gun to my head, that would be the religion I would join. You're more than welcome, Nigel. My second channel, the Magic Buddhist. Yeah, someday maybe. But A&R writes, do you know of the Checkmate sermon? No, I've never heard of that, A&R. A&R's a friend of mine, folks. Drop a like on A&R's comment there. The good guy. Never heard of that, A&R, I'm afraid. Sorry about that. I see the Tawny is saying that Taoism is also appealing. Yeah, that's a good shout. I'm not very familiar with Taoism, but I remember studying it a little bit in university, and that's a good one too. You just don't want to shave your head. That's what? Is it just me, or has this light? Yeah, this light has definitely darkened throughout the stream, but I've just plugged it back in. Give me one moment, folks. I have plugged back in this light, and rather frustratingly, I think because I let it get so low, it's not brightening back up, which is annoying. But sorry about that, folks. Put that back up there. Yeah, it should be a whole hell of a lot brighter, but I just waited too long to plug it back in, so I'm just having to deal with a slightly less bright light. Apologies about that, folks. Where am I gone here? Yeah, I've got my sound here. Fantastic. Rightio. But also, this is not. Ah, there we go. There's my readout. Okay. So yeah, guys, I don't actually plan on streaming for much longer. Head and beard would have to go. I don't plan on streaming much longer. So if you have any other questions to ask, make sure you submit them before I head away. I just wanted to do this stream primarily to talk about the new Online Safety Act and answer a few of your questions and so on. But I also wanted to use this as kind of a tech stream and figure out some of the issues that have been plaguing my streams, and I seem to have resolved those. So by reducing the frame rate to 30 frames per second and by upping the bit rate, I seem to have resolved the streaming issues, and the audio appears to be much better now for everybody, as far as I'm aware, since I increased it. So I think it's all. I say that now, and the stream literally just. I say I've resolved the issues, but the stream literally just had a speed bump, which is frustrating. So you'll probably experience a quick bump in the stream there with the video. Nigel, I am going to go see Naked Gun. I can't wait. I absolutely can't wait. I've loved the trailers, and I love the Leslie Nielsen movies from the past. I love Aeroplane. They're just absolutely magnificent. They're fantastic films. That kind of humor is totally up my alley. I love it so much. So I can't wait for Naked Gun. I hope it's great. It may not be, but I hope it's great. Really looking forward to it. Yeah, if you haven't seen Aeroplane, folks, if you haven't seen Aeroplane, I couldn't recommend more highly that you watch Aeroplane. It's an absolute classic. It's just so great. Oh my God, this man needs a hospital. What is it? It's a big building with patients in it, but that doesn't matter right now. Surely you can't be serious. I am serious, and don't call me Surely. Oh yeah, Leslie Nielsen is dead. Yeah, yeah. Leslie Nielsen won't be in this film. There's no question about that. I wasn't suggesting that Leslie Nielsen will be in it. It's just that this movie is obviously going to be heavily inspired by the Leslie Nielsen films. I mean, if you've seen the trailer, Liam Neeson is actually playing Leslie Nielsen's character's son. And so it's very much an homage to the original, and I think there's going to be lots of laughs there. I hope anyway. The trailer certainly sold me on it, so fingers crossed the real thing works out when I see the final film. It comes out soon, actually, in a couple of days. It might even actually it comes out this weekend. It comes out this weekend. It comes out like the 1st of August, which is this weekend. So I'm really looking forward to seeing it. I'll be in the cinema probably on the first day to watch that one. I'll just say it one last time, guys. If you have a moment there, if you've just joined the stream, could you just drop a like in it, because it helps out the channel enormously. It makes it more likely that YouTube will submit, or not submit, will recommend rather, the live to other viewers, and even after it goes live on the channel as a VOD, it'll be more likely to be recommended to other people. So if you could take a moment, it costs you nothing. If you could drop a like in it, that would be fantastic. And one last reminder before I head away: if you're willing and financially able, and you have any super chats to submit, any questions you'd like me to answer, please consider submitting a super chat, because super chatters and members of my Patreon are the lifeblood of the channel. So I would really sincerely appreciate that if you have a moment and you have a pound to spare. But yeah. Oh, actually, yeah. The last thing I'll tell you guys before I wrap this up, and I think this is exciting to talk about. But for those of you who are anticipating my upcoming videos, I just finished writing my script today for a video response to Andrew Wilson. Do any of you guys know who Andrew Wilson is? Give me like a thumbs up in the chat, or a yes in the chat if you know who Andrew Wilson is. Andrew Wilson is the owner and operator of a YouTube channel called The Crucible, but he's also a frequent, and where most people have probably seen him, a frequent contributor and talking head that appears on the Whatever podcast. If you're on TikTok, you'll know what the Whatever podcast is. The Whatever podcast is one of those shows where they bring on OnlyFans models to make fun of them, basically. They bring them on and make them feel stupid, and they ask them questions and make them look like idiots and that sort of thing. So Andrew Wilson is a frequent contributor on that kind of content. He's kind of like an online debate bro, right-wing conservative commentator, lots of gotchas, lots of Christian content, trying to make atheists look like idiots, trying to make leftists look like idiots. So that's Andrew Wilson. But I just finished my script for him today, so that's going to be coming up in my Most Annoying Religious People series, because boy is Andrew Wilson quite annoying. Some other things to look forward to coming up, folks. I've got a video coming up on Ben Shapiro. I'm sure a lot of you guys will know who Ben Shapiro is. I've got a video coming up on the creationist Ken Ham. Another video coming up on Jordan Peterson, and a video coming up on apologist Trent Horn, and a video coming up on conservative commentator and apologist Dennis Prager. So I've got a whole bunch of juicy stuff in the pipeline that I absolutely can't wait for you guys to see. Really, really looking forward. The pickle jar guy. I'm not sure about a pickle jar, to be perfectly honest with you. Pickle jar guy. I don't know why that's not ringing a bell. Everybody does Ben Shapiro. He is so gullible. Yeah, well, Ben Shapiro was a massive, massive internet presence. Like, he's got millions of subscribers, and his content has an avid following. So I want to do a video on Ben Shapiro because I think there's not enough pushback. I mean, I know you say everybody, but I mean, I haven't seen terribly many people do a video on Ben Shapiro. I've seen a few, but yeah, that guy definitely needs... not that my channel is going to change the world on that front or anything, but I think I owe it to my audience to make a video about Ben Shapiro. I suppose that's what I'm saying. And we've just gotten a super chat, by the way, from Thoughtistic. I love that name. That's great. Thoughtistic. How did you get into magic? Very basic story, actually, Thoughtistic. I got a magic set for Christmas when I was about 5 years of age, and it just changed my life, basically. I remember when I got my magic set and I started doing these little kids' tricks, and my parents were like very... Like, looking back now, they were being nice, but like from an adult's perspective, they were being patronizing. They were like, "Oh, well done, that's so good little boy, that's great." And then I kept practicing, and suddenly their tone changed. So by the time I got to the age of 6 or 7, I started doing tricks where suddenly they weren't saying, "Oh, good boy, well done." They weren't doing that anymore. The tone drastically changed. And they started saying things like, "No, how did you do that? Seriously, how did you do that? Tell us how you did that." Like, the tone just completely inverted from this like childlike patronizing tone to one of genuine kind of, "I have no fucking clue how you just did that, please tell me." And so I was hooked. I was hooked from a very, very young age, and have done magic now for years and years and years. Admittedly, and I'm ashamed to say, I actually don't do it much anymore because I don't have time for it. I'm a teacher by trade, and so when I'm not teaching, I'm YouTubing, I'm video editing, I'm script writing. It's an immense amount of work, folks, to stay on top of one's job and a YouTube channel. So I literally don't have time for magic anymore. I don't dabble in it. I don't practice it. I'd be lying to you if I said I do. So my name, Magic Skeptic, is becoming something of a misnomer because I don't practice magic much anymore. I mean, it'll always be important to me to some extent or another. I'll always be able to do a trick in a pub if somebody asks me to. But it's not a craft that I'm honing any longer. And I don't regret my time in it or anything like that. I just don't have the time for it. And the knowledge I've earned will stay with me forever. Because of my knowledge in magic, I have been uniquely qualified, I would say, when it comes to my skeptical critique of certain forms of woo. So when other atheist skeptic types critique fortune tellers and psychics and mediums, in my humble opinion, they don't do as good a job as somebody like me with a magic background, because a person with a magic background is familiar with the tricks of the trade. They know what the psychic is doing in order to gain access to that information. They're familiar with the psychological subtleties and the various sleights of hand and sleight of mind that's being deployed in order to achieve a particular allegedly supernatural effect, such as mind reading or contacting the dead or something like that. I mean, there are still magic videos available on my channel. I did a series called Street Deceptions. If you go into my channel's history right now, type in Dara's Street Deceptions, you'll find there's a series of about 6 or 7 videos there of me doing magic on the street with people and doing some stuff that's just as impossible as what a psychic or a medium does. I mean, telling people what their 4-digit PIN code is to their phone without ever having met them in the past and without them ever having told me or told anyone. They're the only person in the whole world who knows the PIN code, and yet I'm able to tell them what their PIN code is. And just think about that for a moment. If I'm able to gain access to your PIN code, then what's to stop a fortune teller from gaining access to the names of your dead loved ones? What's to stop them gaining access to precious and private information? Nothing is the short answer. If you study magic and you study the tricks of the trade, you realize that there are methods that magicians use to gain access to information surreptitiously that the spectator is oblivious to. And then you can, quote unquote, read their mind, and the spectator thinks that something paranormal has happened. The only difference between me and a psychic medium is that I'm honest about the fact that I'm tricking people because I present myself as a magician, whereas the psychic medium invites you into a dark, candlelit room and tells you that they're actually communicating with your dead loved ones. And for that reason, I think it's absolutely despicable. It's utterly despicable. It's exploitation in its most obvious form. Emotional exploitation. And I think it's just absolutely disgraceful. So, yeah. I love magic. I just don't have time for it anymore. But the knowledge I've garnered as a consequence of my exploration of magic is priceless, and I continue to use it on a daily basis in my exploration of skepticism and in my critique of bullshit claims, including those that come from the woo peddlers, the peddlers of psychic phenomena and bogus supernatural readings and contacting the dead and all of that absolute garbage. Matt Dillahunty, James Randi, Penn Jillette. Yeah, lots of atheist magicians. You'll find it's quite common thoughtistic because magicians, by their very nature, want to look behind the curtain and see how something is working. They want to understand what's really going on. They don't take things at face value. When something levitates across the stage, or when somebody reads somebody's mind or contacts the dead, a magician's first thought is, how did you do that trick? Not, oh my god, the supernatural is real. So magicians have that kind of analytic mindset, that kind of skeptical, inquiring mind. And that probably has a lot to do with why I'm an atheist. Probably has a lot to do with the work I do in this channel. So I'm forever indebted to magic as an art form for my skeptical fervor. And I love it. And I wish I had more time to do it. But the short answer is I don't. I mean, I spent all of today script writing. And then my fiance came home from work and we had some dinner and we watched some TV. And then she went to bed and I came on here to go live to speak with you guys. My life is completely subsumed by YouTube and my teaching job. And the occasional gym visit, and then any other available time I have, I spend with my fiance. Right? It's very difficult to imagine, bar less the Lord Almighty extends the length of the day, it's very difficult to imagine how I'm going to fit in time for literally anything else. Life is just life is just insanity. Life is crazy. But yeah, with that said, folks, unless there are any other questions, I'll probably leave it there for today. But if you could just offer me some feedback before I head away, just maybe jump into the chat box there and tell me. And also, if you joined, could you just drop a like on the video? That helps out enormously. It costs you nothing, and it really does help. So if you could do that, I'd really very much appreciate it. Yeah, before I head away, if you could just offer some feedback. I mean, I'm not quite sure what to do with these lives just yet. The last number of lives I've done, I've just used them as a chill out Q&A session. But if you have any suggestions or recommendations about what you'd like me to do with a live, I'm all ears. I'd love to hear it, because I'd happily use these lives to tailor them to your preferences or your specifications, because you guys are my subscribers. You guys are the people who are here supporting my content, submitting super chats and so on. So if there's any suggestions about what I should be doing with my lives, I'm all ears. I would love to hear it. Um, it is You Gotta Google Pickle Jar with Andrew Wilson, if that's the name you said. I'll Google it right away. I'm not familiar with this pickle jar reference with Andrew Wilson, so I'm very curious what that is. And if it's funny, perhaps I'll incorporate it into my video that's upcoming about him. Maybe do some magic tricks on stream. Yeah, unfortunately, Thoughtistic, that's just not possible because I don't practice the art anymore, and nothing's worse than magic that's poorly practiced. So I'm not going to go on here and just I'm not going to go on here and kind of muddy the art form by performing it badly. I would have to practice it in order to come on here and do it, and as I pointed out, I don't have the bloody time to practice it, so that's an issue. But I do like when you put it out on Sunday coffee. Yeah, I mean, I can do it on Sundays maybe. Although Sunday tends to be difficult because Sunday tends to be my upload day for my normal scheduled edited content. My response videos, my most annoying religious people, or when theists fail, or that sort of stuff. The Magic Skeptic show and all that jazz. So Sunday is probably, although I do upload bi-weekly, so maybe on the other week. I'm also, guys, experimenting with when I do these lives. So generally speaking, just like tonight, I've been going live at midnight UK time, which I think for my American listeners, depending on whether they're on the east or west coast, works out. Uh, maybe on the east coast it works out at about 6 p.m. for them or something like that. On the west coast, it's going to be even earlier than that, isn't it? So, like, maybe for them, it's going to be closer to like midday or something like that. So, yeah, I could definitely do movie reviews. I was thinking about doing that. Maybe my lives should be movie focused. I could just do a live. Every time I see a new movie, I could just do a quick thumbnail with the movie poster and go live and live review of this movie, and maybe that could just be a whole other section of my channel, because I am an absolute movie buff. I love films, and so that's an interesting suggestion. It's something that I've thought of before, but hearing it reflected back in the chat definitely is encouraging, I must say. So that's something I'll keep in mind, because I go and see a lot of movies. I mean, I mentioned it in the previous chat, like this month, July, I've gone to see like 6 or 7 films. I went to see Jurassic World, I went to see F1, I went to see Megan 2.0, I went to see Superman, I went to see Fantastic Four, I went to see Bring Her Back. That's 6 movies right there, and I don't think I've even named all of them. There's probably a film that I've forgotten. But yeah, I go see a lot of movies, so I could absolutely do movie reviews. I love cinema. I love going to movies. East Coast US is currently 4 hours behind you. West Coast is 3 hours behind that. Yeah, that was my assumption. So actually, no, I did say 5 hours for the East Coast, didn't I? Or maybe I even said 6. So yeah, I'm probably a little bit off there. But yeah, suffice to say, I do have to consider the American audience, because the American audience is actually, if my analytics are to be believed, they're my largest demographic. So the Americans do enjoy my content, and for that I am extremely grateful. So thank you to everybody out there in America. I'm sure some of them are watching right now, and I sincerely appreciate it. But yeah, guys, look, with that said, I'm actually going to leave it there for tonight because we're just about to hit 2 hours. And thank you to those who super chatted. It's incredibly, very much appreciated. I just want to say again in closing that the super chats, guys, they really are the lifeblood of the channel. I am. I can't keep making this content without the financial support of people. And anybody who's seen fit, even if it's just $2, anybody who's seen fit to submit a super chat, I'm eternally grateful for that. It's incredibly kind, it's incredibly generous. Every last dollar, pound, euro, yen, whatever currency it is greatly appreciated. And to those of you who take the even extra leap after that and become a patron and sign up to my Patreon, I mean, that's just incredible. That's a monthly commitment. If you're interested, the link is in the description below. And again, it is these people who keep the channel going. But if you're unable to afford that, even just the people who just join here, sit here and watch and drop likes in the video and jump into the chat box, it's incredibly gratifying, guys, and moving, and it's very, very much appreciated. So from the bottom of my heart, I can't thank you enough. It's still strange to me that I'm able to just come online here at a moment's notice and a bunch of people will join me in a live and talk to me. It really is an incredible fact about the platform that I'm building here on YouTube, and I'm incredibly grateful for it. So listen, thank you so much for joining me here this evening. Thank you for all of your super chats and for keeping me company, this Irish idiot. Thank you for keeping me company. Thank you for supporting my vision here on this channel and for just being nice and generous with your time. Thank you for dropping likes. Thank you for chatting in the chat box. And thank you for your suggestions. And the most important thank you is to those who submitted super chats and joined the Patreon. I really, really do appreciate it. But with that said, folks, I'm going to leave it there for this evening. And yeah, I'll catch you in the next live, hopefully in the not too distant future. And other than that, please look forward to my next video, which will go live this Sunday. My next edited video, which I won't spoil just yet, but it's going to be a good one. So thanks very much, folks, and keep safe. And as I always say, keep being skeptical. Thanks very much for watching. All the best. Good night, good evening, and good luck.